Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks. How you doing, man?
Good. We just got done recording an excellent episode. We had Drew Wiard back on the show, the famous flying investor. And honestly, man, my head is still spinning from our conversation. Anytime I interview Drew, I feel like I learn 10 new things and have a totally different perspective than when I started the conversation. I love it. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy too because he's also this like highly accomplished pharmacy hospital director,
Yep.
right? And so, but aside from that, he's also a highly accomplished real estate investor and knows several different avenues of real estate. Puts those all together. So yeah, it's fascinating how he's kind of woven that even into multiple careers so far.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, just backing up, right? We had Drew on the show back on episode 49. On Instagram, Drew is known as the Flying Investor. That's because he does a lot of para motoring. You need to check out his Instagram if you haven't already. It's awesome. And just again, his content is awesome. His entertainment is fantastic. His perspective on the financial world is just really astute. And so I love having him on the show. I love talking with Drew. I just feel like I learn something every time I chat with him.
Yeah, and it's not a gimmicky thing either. I know that there's people that like try to drive content on their social media through gimmicks, but that's not at all this. Like he really knows his stuff about different areas of real estate, and talking about the power of early retirement and how that it just kind of works in that direction. And not early retirement necessarily to go like play golf every day or something like that, but he wove this into. He wanted to have a different challenge and a second career, and so this very early retirement enabled him to do that as a business owner of a completely unrelated business to pharmacy or real estate.
Yeah, we'll leave you hanging with what that business is. I want to make sure that you hear it right from Drew. And there's a lot going on with the multiple income streams that he developed to really make sure that he was secure in his financial freedom. And again, just awesome perspective. So hope you guys enjoy the show as much as we enjoyed recording it. Here you go. Hey, Drew, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. We've been following your story since we last had you on way back in March of 2022, episode 49, for those that may have missed it. And we've had a couple of updates from Drew since then. So I want to make sure we dive into those, learn a little bit more about what you've been up to. So maybe give us that 10,000 foot view of what's changed and how things have differed since our last chat.
Yeah, absolutely. My world is very, very different than it was back on episode 49. So I'll give you, again, quick high level review and you guys can tell me where we want to jump in. But back in March, I was one of the directors of pharmacy at a large health system here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and had been investing in real estate about 7 years. And I've done all sorts of different types of things. And if you jump from then to today, which is what we're at the tail end of November. I have since retired from medicine and doing real estate full time. And that has been just a phenomenal transition. In addition to the real estate, though, partner and I acquired a business. So now we are officially business owners. And that's been a whole adventure in and of itself.
That's awesome, man. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been exciting, and it's not without its challenges. But I'm excited to take them on. You know, every day is a good time. So
Good.
No, I want to break those two things apart for a minute because you went from pharmacy into two different worlds there between real estate and business owner. So let's put business owner on the back burner for a minute. And I want to go there, but let's talk about the real estate side first. So you mentioned that you had 7 years of experience in real estate to get there. So it wasn't like, hey, you bought one rental property, time to quit my job, time to jump into this, right? Like you had some track record there before you made that jump. So I'm curious, what was kind of the motivation behind that or the ramp up to that? Or did you think about part-time as a way to get there? What did that kind of cross titration of worlds look like?
yeah, really good question. You know, and I think we touched on this some of in the previous episode, but I got into real estate just to grow kind of my security blanket. You know, it
Mhm.
wasn't ever supposed to replace a job or anything like that. It was just, you know, just in case you lose a job, here's something on the side.
Mm.
A couple of years later, it got bigger. And then it was, okay, well, maybe this helps me retire at 60 instead of 65. And then, you know, the last couple of years, it got big enough to the point where, okay, maybe if I wanted it to set me free, it could. And, you know, eventually it did. Um, so it was kind of a transition for a while. But throughout time, I just kind of kept stacking rentals, building more passive income, and while I was doing that, then we try a new model of and maybe we eventually got to apartment syndications, but we do land contracts and we do a couple flips and we try some wholesaling and things like that. And so it was an evolution right up until the point it was about time to go.
Yeah. And I want to, like, as you get to that point, right? So I think a lot of people think about this moment. If you're in the realm of wanting to cut back on pharmacy or step back from pharmacy in some way, if that's at all one of your goals, right? I think everyone kind of pictures this moment as like, oh, I walk out of the pharmacy on the last day and then like I throw a party and that's it. Like, what was the lead up to like that? Was it nerve wracking? Was it exciting? Was it just talk to us a little about that? Because not a lot of people have been through that, and you
Sure.
recently did. So walk us through that.
Yeah, and I'll kind of tell you some of the tools and stuff that I used to get through. I don't know that
Great.
everyone would necessarily have to use the tools that I did, but it was very nerve wracking. I'm the sole breadwinner in my house, right? So if we're going to do this, like it has to work. And so it was stressful, and I labored on it for a while. So once I kind of arrived to the point where, okay, maybe I could step away and do real estate. I needed some coaching and things, and so I did hire a mindset coach or an executive coach for about 6 months to really walk through, like, help me get my head around this, like, help me pull out the fears that are there and let's talk about them, because are they legitimate or am I just making them up and things like that. And honestly, for me, that was time and money really, really well spent, because it did pull some legit fears that I hadn't even thought about. And I'll give you an example. So like, as W-2 employees, most of us are salaried, or even if you are hourly, like you've gotten a paycheck every 2 weeks since you started working, right? And I knew it would change from getting the paychecks to, okay, now it's going to be more like the rentals will have some stable income, but I only, that's just a portion of what my income is. The rest of it comes like when I flip a house, and that might be every 3 or 4 months or something like that. And I didn't realize it, but like, the last thing keeping me from jumping was this fear of kind of like the whole feast or famine type of mentality. And so because of that, my coach kind of pulled that out of me. And then we said, okay, well, what do we do about that? Well, what I did for the last 6 months of working was I took all my W-2 income and I set it completely aside. It all went into a savings account. And so we lived off of just real estate for 6 months to prove to myself that I can live without pharmacy. And at the beginning of it, I was terrified. Like, there's no way I'm not going to be able to take 7 or 8 grand after taxes and just stick it over here, But we did, and we stacked up this pile of cash that now is another reserve for me. To answer your question, it was stressful. I needed some help to get through it. And I still wrestle time to time. When the deals are heavy, things are great. But when they're thin, then, you have a little anxiety there.
I bet.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm imagining too, like, we got there in under 7 minutes of an interview, but that took you 7 years to get there. And so it sounds like you're describing almost this, like, maybe 7 years ago, you didn't have this vision to be retired in 7 years. You just had this thought of, well, this is going to provide some cushion, some opportunity, maybe an extra vacation, maybe a little bit of early retirement. So you had some time to kind of mentally get there slowly, which I think I'm imagining helped in that transition. One of the things that we also hear from pharmacists that make that transition, like somewhere between organically and accidentally even, is that there's then an identity shift that happens because you've identified as a healthcare professional for so long. That's been your day-to-day 40 plus hours, going in, working hard, owning that profession. And then that part for you changed overnight. So can you talk to us about that for a minute too?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm smiling because I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head. I think, I host the local real estate investors association. So we have new people jumping in all the time, and they always ask, what do I need to do? Like, how do I get started, and so on and so forth. And there are certain things you need to do, but it's less about what you do and more about who you have to be. And so as I kind of evolved from, okay, I want to retire a little bit earlier and these are good investments. Oh, now I might live off of this. Like, it's had to be kind of a constant evolution of, okay, who am I now? And who do I have to be to get to that next level? And for me, like, who do I have to become to be able to step away from pharmacy if that's what I wanted, and lean into this? Well, you have some fear issues you have to deal with. You're going to have, discipline to get up and do your work, because you're not going to have a boss. Like, I used to have a boss, and if I rolled in at about 9:15, because I usually work 9 to 5, right? But yeah, I roll in at 9:15. I know that he knows, right? And he could call me on it, and he'd be right to do so. Now, admittedly, like, there are days where I'll stay up real late with the kids, just doing whatever, hanging out, and I might not get to the office to 10. And there's no one to blame but me if I don't get my work done that day. So I had to become the kind of person that has the self drive and the self accountability. And sometimes I'm good at that, and sometimes I'm not. I'm still learning. Who does Drew have to be successful?
I think that's a really interesting point, because I know if I look back at my own life, right, when I got my real estate license and I posted that, hey, I'm a real estate agent now. And one of the first questions I got from like 10 of my college friends was, oh, so you're quitting pharmacy, right? It's either this or that. You have one identity. And I think a lot of pharmacists and a lot of professionals in general struggle with that, right? You introduce yourself, hey, I'm Nate, I'm a pharmacist. That's all I got, right? Instead of, no, I do a lot of things, right? I have a lot of activities. I have a lot of different passions. And I think getting over that hump of this is the only thing I do and this is my identity, that had to be difficult too.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd completely agree with you. I think for me, like, for a long time, I had kind of a foot in both worlds,
Mm-hmm.
right? I had my rentals, I was buying some new things, but I was still not only in pharmacy, but in leadership. And there were times where I did relatively well at that, and times where it was very ungraceful. I know, like, I worked with amazing people. I had a great leadership team with me and great pharmacists and such. But towards the end, like, I know that I was driving them nuts, because I just wasn't engaged at the level that I was probably 2 or 3 years ago. As I started to lean this direction, I leaned away from pharmacy. And it doesn't have to be like that for everyone. Again, I invested for probably 5 years in tandem, and it was a pretty good fit, until, I became the kind of person that kind of leaned the other way.
Are there any other major milestones that you saw in that journey as you were making that transition that allowed you that, earlier than you were predicting retirement, now much earlier than you were predicting retirement? Anything else that people kind of thinking about this pathway might be thinking?
I don't know that I can point to any specific milestone, but what I can tell you, and I think we might have touched on this on the previous episode, is it's a pharmacist's nature to have all the answers, get everything right. Like, they have to know everything. And one of the things that I had to embrace is, if I want to get good at investing, I have to get good at making mistakes or not knowing every single thing about what I'm about to do. If you're dosing insulin, you better get it right.
Mm-hmm.
If you're buying a rental property, you still need to make as many good decisions as you possibly can. But if you don't get it just right, time tends to heal some of those wounds in a way that an insulin mistake, you may not come back from.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be my advice for people is, just know that it's, at least investing for me and my path. The more you screw up, the more you're going to learn. Right. And I want to learn and grow. So I need to make mistakes to help me get better along my growth journey.
And so if you look back at again, just the last, let's call it 10 years, if you were talking to yourself, right, 10 years back, or a pharmacist today that is thinking about, hey, I want to have the option to do this. I don't know if I want to leave pharmacy. I like what I do. I don't need to be out of this job. But if I want to have that option in 10 years, what does that advice look like for someone that wants to start on that journey today?
Yeah, I would tell them not to wait. Again, I think pharmacists want all the details before they jump in, and lots of other people do as well. We have lots of people who will come to our Real Estate Investors Association. They've been there 3, 4, 5 years, and they still haven't bought anything. And now they're kicking themselves, right? If they could go back a couple of years, they would buy more. It's easy for me to say, okay, 10 years ago, you should have bought more. Well, I'm not who I was back then, and I had really little kids back then, and and I was growing a career that I was madly in love with, so I don't really begrudge my journey because it's what brought me to the point that I am today. Um, but I would tell me to start investing earlier. You don't have to do it on my scale, and you don't have to do it, this grandiose way. But um, just if you find yourself dragging your feet, don't drag your feet. If you have a heart to go for it, then you need to go for it. Get around people who are doing it, listen to the podcasts, like grow your network, and just get going and doing it.
Love it.
I like that a lot too, and I like the recognition that not everybody is looking for a very early retirement. Not everybody's looking for an early retirement at all. Some people may just be looking for a little supplement, an additional cushion, a couple of rentals, and for that person's journey, that may be fine. That wasn't your journey. You went further from that, but yeah, nothing wrong with either direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the perfect example is I have a couple of pharmacists who are brilliant pharmacists, smarter than I'll ever be. And they are, just at the top of their pharmacy game, but they love real estate and they want to invest in real estate. They know that now's not their season. So they invest with me alongside me in my deals. And we've done that numerous times over and over. They just, they get mailbox money. I go out and find the deals. We kind of partner on some of these things. And so there's those opportunities as well. Like if you love your pharmacy hustle, then keep hustling and find someone to collaborate with. I think I probably brought on, 50 different private money lenders off and on throughout the years at this point. So, if you want to be in the game and want to be diversified, there are ways to do it where you're not necessarily the one swinging hammers or searching for deals, or you can still go be the king or queen of pharmacy and still be invested in real estate.
I love that.
I like that a lot. Let's transition to what you're doing in real estate now. So I'm curious what your real estate investing portfolio looked like at the point at which you were comfortable making that jump, and then how that may or may not have shifted in the last few months as the market changed and some of those kind of things.
Yeah. So we have somewhere between 40 and 50 rentals, and I should know the number, but honestly, I've sold a handful of them as I kind of reposition my portfolio. So it's still 40 plus, but I got rid of some while the market was super hot. These would have been houses that, need some rehab, need some attention in the next 5 years. They're going to need a roof. They're going to need, so we've kind of culled the herd. And then I've taken some of those funds and we've 1031'd into some new properties. And if we want to dig into that, we can. So, but I'm still very much buy and hold. Rentals account for about 50 to 60% of how much I made as director of pharmacy. So I'm not 100% passive. I'm about 50 to 60% passive. And I have a major goal to get to 100% passivity. But until I do, I also run a wholesaling business. I have a team that takes care of most all of that. My responsibility is really making sure that the marketing goes out and that I find money, other people's money, and pay them a handsome return to invest with us. And then everybody else goes and takes the pictures and visits and negotiates with the sellers and things like that. And the goal with that is every time we find just a perfect little rental, we will keep it for ourselves. But if it doesn't fit our criteria, then I take it first to my Real Estate Investors Association, rather than putting on the MLS or anything like that. And they get first, I want my people to have first dibs at whatever. Mm-hmm. We will occasionally flip something if it's paint and carpet and really, really easy. But truth be told, if you're going to do a flip and it's going to take 90 days and you'll make 30 grand, or I can sell it in one day to someone in the Real Estate Investors Association and make 15 to 20, I'll take the 15 to 20 because I believe in the velocity of money. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be weighed down by heavy rehabs. It's not what I'm great at, I want to focus more on passivity and things like that. So we still do the apartment syndications, still working on that. We're still buying commercial real estate, and we have a lot of private money that partners with us on those deals. We've slowed down on that, but only because of the business acquisition that we went into. And so I would say probably the last 90 to 120 days has really been focused on business acquisition. But we have some first quarter real estate goals to get back to commercial real estate. So was a windy answer, but that's what I'm working on.
No, it's a good one. And one thing that you mentioned in there that I want to touch on too, just because I think this is where a lot of our audience is at, right, is like the single family home market. Because I know that's an area you've been in for years, an area you're still heavily invested in, but there's been a
Yep.
lot of market shifts. I mean, have you seen
Yeah.
that acting negatively? Are you changing your strategy as a result, right? Is that maybe why the flips aren't as lucrative as they maybe were back in a couple months back or a year or two back?
Yeah, really good question. I'm not steering away from the flips because they're not as lucrative. I'm steering away from them because I know what the highest and best use of my time is,
Mhm.
and trapping my money or someone else's money in a 90 to 180-day flip is not the highest and best use of my skills. Might be of someone else's, but it's not of mine.
Great point.
Um, when it comes to the market has changed radically.
Mhm.
But my mantra is if you're a good investor and you're versatile and you're resourceful, you're buying in an up market, you're buying in a down market. Now, in the up market, I would buy houses directly from sellers for 70 to 75% of value minus the rehab costs. Well, we had a team meeting 2 weeks ago to say no more of that. We're at 65% LTV minus the rehabs. That's going to make it harder to get deals because even though that's where the market is and it is slower to move inventory, sellers still think that it's a hot market and they still think that they can sell that house, super quick. And in some instances they can. And we'll be honest, we'll tell them if we believe that they can and they have a better option. But what we're seeing right now is we'll make the offer, they'll think we're nuts, and they call us back in 45 days and say, we listed it, we didn't get what we want. Are you still interested? And of course we are.
I love it.
Yeah. And I know the residential space is one market that shifted, and as interest rates have come up, I know that that's beginning to have impact on the commercial space as well. And commercial, I think in this case, because you talked about apartment syndication, we're talking about 5 or more units in a building where even though it's still a residence, it counts as commercial real estate. So
Yeah.
in that world, particularly because I know that uh, you mentioned other pharmacists coming in on syndication deals, partnering up to buy a larger apartment building like that in the safety of a team and the
Yep.
experience there. And I know a lot of pharmacists like that. Should pharmacists be getting nervous about that commercial market shifting, potential value changes there? What are you seeing?
I don't know that I can tell you whether they should or shouldn't be nervous. It depends on what they're invested in and who they're invested with. I think that's really the question.
Mhm.
If you are part of a syndication, there are a lot of syndications that are going to struggle badly because they bought 3 or 4 years ago and they're doing a value add and they need to refinance at some point. And they probably didn't put it in their underwriting to be able to refinance at 6.5, 7, 8%, whatever we wind up getting to. And if you can't refinance, they default. And that's a scary place to be. So if you're considering jumping into syndications, you shouldn't be nervous about them. There are those of us who, like, we've gone full cycle on. We've acquired 8 different apartment complexes, and we've gone full cycle on 5 of them. So we still own 3. The 3 that we have and that we're working through now, we're still renting out every week above what our underwriting was. Now is probably not the season to sell that asset because the market has softened, but we buy heavy cash flow assets. And so our people are getting their quarterly distributions. Um, Things are in a really, really good spot for us. The other thing that those syndicators can do is what they should have done, what we choose to do is you buy what they call rate caps, meaning, we're going to buy while interest rates are at 4%, but we're going to buy an insurance policy that caps it at 4.5% if it goes up, something like that. They're very expensive. I mean, they cost over $1 million sometimes, but we bought it on all of our properties. And so while some syndicators are seeing their rates tick up and kind of go through the roof, ours are locked in at, whatever our rate caps stop at. And it was money very, very well spent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that what you said there about not just what the asset is itself, but who the investment team is, I think is critically important because you mentioned one, the track record that you and your team have over multiple projects. You've not just done 1 or 2 in the last year or 2 and haven't seen that to fruition, but you've been involved in several of those, and then you're also making decisions on those that seem relatively conservative in the moment. And so I know pharmacists tend to have those risk averse, conservative kind of tendencies to them. So I think as you're vetting someone to invest with, looking for some of those kind of things, looking at that track record, looking at the tendencies, the behavior, the fact that you're going high cash flow instead of betting on enormous appreciation as your play, I think some of those things are very different. And different syndicators are going to have very different approaches to their investing. So if as folks are doing their homework, those feel like some of the questions to ask. Anything else that you would suggest a pharmacist ask a syndicator that is trying to tread water in this space right now?
Yeah, the other thing I would tell folks to do is, track record is everything, and you can talk to your sponsor or whoever's bringing that deal to you, but you need to talk to other people who know this individual, know their character, and have watched them go through some of these deals. Um, I have seen some investors not do so well because it looks like there's a good track record or someone's been in real estate for a long time. They had good conversations and a good feeling about them, but you didn't necessarily bounce it off of 5 other people who've been investing with them for the last 3 or 4 years. And some of those people are kind of on the receiving end of some rough times right now, as the market shifts. So, get to know the person, ask them lots of questions and all that, but get to know the people who know them, and have been through some of their deals. I think it's really, really valuable.
Such good stuff. If you are at all considering syndications, go rewind this, listen to the last 5 minutes again, because all that stuff was gold, especially the part about people who didn't underwrite their deals with the current market interest rates in play. It was hard to see, but at the same time, if you're not planning for something like that, you're not doing your due diligence. You're not setting yourselves up for success. And there's, like you said, a lot of people who are going to be stuck with assets they cannot cover because they're not going to be able to get a loan or they can't pay off their debts. So, I mean, it could be bad. So,
Yeah. The other thing I would say with syndications is like the day will come where I kind of want to retire and settle down and just chill out a little bit. And I already invest in syndications, ones that aren't necessarily my own all the time. But, if I had $500,000 to put in, I wouldn't put it all in one syndication, and I probably wouldn't put 250 here and here. I'd probably take 50 to 100 grand or whatever their minimums are, and put $100,000 in 5 different syndications. And I think it's really important to diversify across different operators just to help mitigate some of those risks.
that's great. Great point. And it leads me back to the business that you acquired, because I think this is something I want to touch on too, right? We don't talk about this a lot on the show, but there was a great Ask a YFP CFP episode that just came out right at the end of November. And the question came up, what do I do if I want to retire early, but I don't want to include real estate in that early retirement process? And one of the things that Tim Baker mentioned on that episode was, well, you could buy a business and that business pays you, and then you retire on that as well. And so we don't talk about that a lot, but we've got a unique experience here from you, Drew. And so tell us a little about that. You bought up a business recently, so walk us through kind of the 10,000-foot view of that.
Yeah. So I think there's probably 2 different ways to look at it. There are probably some of those people who have left pharmacy to acquire a business, right? They left one for clearly the other. That was not my path. I left to do real estate. Like that was my thing. And my partner and I, we had talked about like, oh, it'd be really nice to own a business someday and all of that. But he and his wife retired from their current field. They were both engineers. They retired like back in January. So they were ahead of me and they had been researching businesses and things. And then I caught up with them when I retired in early June. And so I was going to move forward with just real estate. I was comfortable with that, but we started researching and really falling in love with the idea of it. And so we started going through the process, and I don't know how granular you want to get, but we found a business that we were very, very interested in, and we started making moves on it. We put an offer in, and they rejected us the first time and went with the other party. But the other party lost their tail end in the crypto meltdown and couldn't close on the business. So they came back to us, and
Wow.
we don't play a lot of crypto games because in my mind, that's speculation, and I don't like losing money. So, so we were able to move forward with that, and we closed that, oh boy, towards mid-September, maybe mid to late September. So we're about 90 days in now, and there's lots of work to be done, but it's humming. And we take very, very small salaries from that, mostly because our healthcare benefits now come from that business.
Cool.
That wasn't the plan at the get-go, but it is now. And if you're going to take benefits from a business, you have to pay yourself at least enough salary that's commensurate with the benefits package that you're taking. So that's why we have a little bit of income coming our way. Eventually, it'll get huge, but we've decided not to take from the business. We're going to keep reinvesting like crazy over the next 2 to 3 years.
I love that. And that's, again, so many times people talk about fire or retiring early, and healthcare becomes that huge question. Like, should I move to Portugal where healthcare is free? Or should I, like, what are my options? And not a lot of people talk about acquiring a business and then charging the business or including that healthcare benefit through the business. I think that's a great hack. I love that. It's awesome.
Yeah. For me, my plan was to just go out to like healthcare.gov and get a plan. And that's exactly what we did. I technically still have that plan. I think it's going to end, tonight, at the end of tonight, December 1st is tomorrow. It'll be gone. But we carried it for 4 or 5 months. And it's expensive for sure. But we went to the ER twice and had good coverage there. We went to a specialist once. It was good. So it's not the healthcare you're probably accustomed to, especially if you work in the hospital. Like I was used to free MRIs and like all this kind of stuff. It's not going to be that. But that was one of the fears that kind of the health coach said, let's talk about what that fear is and try to quantify it, and let's, minimize it if you can. And so I just built it into the budget to pay for healthcare. And now that we have the business, the business covers 100% of the cost. So now I've got healthcare that's more free than it was when I worked for the hospital.
Right. I love it.
So yeah, it's great.
One of the things that we talked about right before we hit record, just as we were talking about the business that has stuck in my mind, is just how running a small business is flexing such different muscles than it takes to be a hospital director. And I know that there's a lot of pharmacists that will jump from maybe community to hospital or hospital community or hospital to AmCare, or they'll do different things, home infusion. They'll have kind of several different careers within pharmacy in order to flex different muscles. And this is kind of a step out of pharmacy to flex different muscles. But can you talk about some of those, how that transition was a little different, the different skill set, the different creative juices, like how that all plays into this?
Yeah, I can certainly try. To help kind of give that story, I guess I'll tell you the nuts and bolts of what the business is. It's manufacturing. It's a small manufacturing business. And I say small in that we have about 31 employees. We do about $4.5 million worth of revenue each year with about 800,000 in EBITDA or profit after you have all your expenses taken out. And so it's basically, it's a book bindery, right? So like an F-150 truck, right? Someone buys an F-150, it has a manual in the glove box, right? Well, every manual in an F-150 in the nation has come through my shop.
Cool.
Farmer's Almanac, like every single one of those in the nation has come through my shop. So that's it. So it's manufacturing. And so, I started in pharmacy. I got into real estate, which is totally different. I'm now in manufacturing, totally, totally different. So for me personally, I like challenging myself with different things, learning new trades and things. I think the piece that really stands out for me is I was in pharmacy leadership for years, 15 years. As soon as I got out of residency, I was in leadership. And it was good to me. I wouldn't complain about it at all. But, you can go to work and love on your patients and love on your staff and this, that, and the other. But there's not a lot of room for creativity or implementing your own programs, or some hospitals are better about it than maybe others, but you're confined to some degree. Owning the business, like if we decide that we're going to raise salaries or we're going to go spend $500,000 on equipment, which we decided today, like I have to live and die by that decision, but it's so exciting. Like I'm all about it. I know that it's going to be a win. If it's not, I'll take full accountability for that decision, but at least I get to, as you said, kind of flex that muscle and think outside the box and grow, And so for now, that's the stuff that I'm really, really enjoying.
I love that. I just think that there are so many people out there that can resonate with that idea of it can be exciting to be a little uncomfortable, right? It's fun to learn a new thing, and you can take the skills from the last thing that you did, whether that's pharmacy director or again, I think about like even like my goofy jobs in high school, and like I took some of the skills I learned from that to pharmacy and so on and so forth. So like there's never a time where you just turn off your old stuff and it converts to this new thing. You get to translate those old skills up, and I think that's really exciting, and it makes it fun to kind of try something new and bring in a new fresh perspective that may not have been there before.
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle with, be it investing or business buying or whatever, or even their own fitness or relationships or like whatever it is, right? Everyone, it's our nature to try to stay comfortable, right? If you're cold, you put a blanket on, right? Or it's just your nature, right? I think people who want to invest or who want to buy businesses or climb Mount Everest or whatever, like you have to deliberately put yourself outside of your comfort zone because that's where growth happens. The likelihood of you growing inside of your comfort zone is slim to none. And so I guess that would probably be one of the challenges I give to folks. Like if you're just nervous about investing or you're nervous about like whatever it is you're going after, if you're not ready to pull the trigger on investing, okay, find ways to put yourself outside of your comfort zone because it will exercise the part of your mind that says, okay, this is new and it's different. How do I either get comfortable in this new space or pivot or find a way through the maze? So that's also a challenge to me. I'm preaching to myself, right? Like be okay with being uncomfortable because when you are, that's where the growth is going to happen.
Love that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One of the things that I've noticed that you do is you're very much an open book on social media. So if people are looking for some of these motivating stories and maybe it's not always the most beautiful story and all that, but still just the motivation of the reality of some of that. If people are looking for ways to connect with you, where can people find you if they want to know more?
Yeah, the best way to find me is probably across all social. You can find me at The Flying Investor. I've started leaning into TikTok now that I've got a little more time. We're putting out reels. I fly paramotors all the time. So a lot of those reels and things I'll be flying. We'll be talking about real estate. And I do that, a lot of people do that to grow their audience or they've got their free or not their free program, but their free booklet that leads to the program. Like I don't have any of that stuff. I just enjoy doing it and I enjoy sharing. Instagram's at The Flying Investor. It's same for TikTok. Of course, you can always find me just by my name on Facebook.
And if you missed the episode where Drew flies to Thanksgiving dinner, go check it out. That was a good one. I saw that.
That was a good, we're starting out small, right? So most of those TikToks or reels, they get 300 views, 500. That one's up to like 4,000.
I loved it. I thought it was great. I saw that on Thanksgiving. I was like, look at this guy. This is awesome. I love Drew.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't talk about real estate at all. So maybe that's the secret sauce. Maybe I just need to give up the education and just take everyone flying with me.
I just think it's wholesome. I think everybody can deal with, like everybody has dealt with getting to Thanksgiving, and you did it in a way that I've never seen somebody get to Thanksgiving dinner. So I dug that. That was great.
Yeah. It was, as I was flying in that day, I could see my folks standing on their back porch.
Cool.
And of course, my mom's just flipping out because it makes her terrified.
As you're coming in hot.
We had a good, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Drew, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your story. Congratulations again on your retirement. And I'm pumped to see what you guys end up doing next because I'm sure I'll be following it. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. I don't know how often you do round 2, but when you're ready for round 3, you let me know and
I'm certain we will have you back, my friend.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard on today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with Nate or David, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group. As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is provided to you for your informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on this podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist, unless otherwise noted, and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.